Right stuff. Thank you for joining me once again, where people continue, I surmise, to be wrong on the interwebs. Caveat, I have not watched this video through. This will be a live, off-the-cuff reaction style video from yours truly, the Field Marshal. This is a bloke called Scott Abel, who used to do some training apparently quite a bit and now runs a very moderately sized YouTube channel wherein he likes to say things to people like, Keto is an epic fail, apparently. That's what this video is entitled. Keto is an epic fail. Here's the proof. All right, Scott, give us the proof and we'll put you right where you get it wrong, which I suspect will be pretty much everywhere, won't it? All right, off you go, Scott.
All right, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about why and how keto diet is an epic fail when it comes to real peer-reviewed research.
Real peer-reviewed research, as opposed to that fake stuff, you mean?
Keto diet is an epic fail.
So that's the first error that you've made there, Scott, is that you are basically, by omission of a clear statement to the contrary, you are buying into the fallacy of the peer review veracity. Just because a paper might be peer-reviewed does not mean it is correct or has veracity or utility, or that it's correct or establishes proof one way or another of anything or any other thing. Actually, research comes in all sorts of different levels of quality. All right? Good. So let's carry on.
In this day of social media, it makes you wonder if the cabbage soup diet and the grapefruit diet and all these other diets were around in the days of social media, how much following they would have gathered as well. So a lot of foolishness out there.
So now you are, again, by lack of a clear statement to the contrary, equating foolishness with ketogenic lifestyles. So we already know who it is who is the utter fool here. We know who it is that is completely lacking in any actual knowledge or any ability to actually engage with the objective reality in which we all find ourselves, or indeed to adequately, competently read and critically analyze the literature such that it is that would advise us on what the best diet for a human being probably is. Good, Scott. Okay, so it's not looking good for you, basically. What are we? 25 seconds into your video and it's already clear that you're a complete cocksplat, son, before you've even said anything. Because the two things you have said are both absolutely fucking ridiculous. What's next?
But when it comes to real peer-reviewed research,
You've said that.
keto diet is an epic fail.
Okay, well, you want to establish that posit somehow? Would be interesting. I presume that's what you're going to attempt to do here in your 30-minute video. This will be fun.
Medical uses for ketogenic diets aside, in terms of long-term health, wellness, and even weight loss and sustainability of weight loss, keto diet is an epic fail.
Nonsense on all of those counts. Everything you've just said is false, demonstrably false.
And that's reflected in the research.
No, it fucking isn't. One of us has had a long history with not only competently assessing the literature, Scott, but also producing some of the literature as an independent scientist and researcher in my own right. And the other one of us, Scott, is you. It'd be interesting to see how you attempt to back up your claims here.
Over and over again. So let's look at these key parameters regarding relevant research markers, peer-reviewed research.
You've said peer-reviewed. I don't know how many times you want to say peer-reviewed as if that's going to give anything you have to say any veracity at all.
Expected research, and what does the real research...
Again, you've said real. Yeah. What does that mean, Scott? Do you have any idea whatsoever about what you're even going to say in this video? It seems like not. Do you have a plan? It seems like not.
Authentic peer-reviewed research tell us about keto...
Let's say peer-reviewed again, though.
Diet, and I've already told you it tells us that keto diet is an epic fail.
Well, it doesn't though, Scott. It says nothing of the sort. The body of peer-reviewed literature such that it is does not say what you claim it says, taken as a whole at large, remotely, at all. False. Lie. Or incompetent assessment, or both. Whatever.
Well, epic fail for sustainable weight loss.
No, it isn't.
Epic fail for longevity.
No, it isn't. There's no evidence for that whatsoever.
epic fail in terms of even anecdotal evidence.
No, false again. Wrong on every single count there. Completely wrong.
Longevity, and epic fail in terms of finding any meta-analysis and cross-cultural studies where any society.
What has cross-culture got to do with it?
Societies have lived.
And why would you think a meta-analysis would be of any particular value, given that these are naturalistic observations conducted with absolutely no control at all? These are not science, Scott. Wow, by the way. Tell us all about health, though, son.
Lived and thrived on low-carb diets. They simply aren't out there in terms of cultural studies and.
Right, that's why we have things like stable isotope testing, which corroborate absolutely unequivocally, it means without question, Scott, that human beings have consumed a very, very low carbohydrate diet for the best part of the last 4.5 million fucking years, son. Okay, so no, wrong. Completely wrong. The facts are in. The science is in. Stable isotope testing doesn't lie. It tells us what human beings have eaten. Okay? We don't need a meta-analysis on naturalistic observations of modern people. No. Goodness me, what a buffhead.
Meta-analysis. Well, you say you don't care about any of that. All you want to hear about is the weight loss.
No, I'm not interested in weight loss either, because weight is the force exerted on a scale by the mass of a body under the influence of gravity. And such force, the weight force, can be made up in a number of different ways. I'm interested in body composition, not weight.
And that's what most people on social media rave about. But you should care about all.
You sound a bit gassed there, son. It's not like you're actually training or doing any physical activity or whatever. Are you okay? How's your health? Because you really seem to be struggling with even speaking. What's going on? Tell us about health, though, son. Where you go?
All these things. And the reason is because of metabolic adaptations, metabolic consequences that ensue on low-carb diets, especially in a state of ketogenesis, which is an emergency state of the body.
No, it isn't, Scott. Not at all. There's no emergency whatsoever in a ketogenic state of being, in a ketogenic lifestyle, in a ketogenic approach to nutrition. No emergency of any kind. It's a perfectly normal, perfectly natural metabolic process that exists precisely because it's encoded for in our DNA, such DNA having survived billions and billions of years of both positive and negative selection pressures to take the exact shape that it takes currently as the pinnacle of evolution to this point in time. No emergency. We are absolutely adapted to ketogenesis. It's there for a reason. It's there for a purpose. It serves that purpose. It serves it well. No emergency.
But since weight loss is anything anyone can think about, I'm going to start there, even though I wanted to start in other places. So any diet, ill-conceived or not, can lead to short-term weight loss.
And long-term as well, if it's reasonably sustainable and well put together, which a ketogenic approach to life, if properly put together and properly executed, absolutely is. I've been consuming a largely ketogenic approach nutritionally for the best part of 27 years now. That's pretty sustainable. And my weight is in the optimal range. I'm 50 years of age, 50. I am told I look younger than that. Okay, that's subjective, whatever. I enjoy the rudest health I have pretty much at any time in my adult life, actually, since throwing off the shackles of the remaining plant materials that were in my diet about 7 years ago and going to 95% carnivore plus, with several notable periods of 100% carnivory. Perfect. Really good. Very sustainable, very satiating. no health problems. In fact, all the health problems I did have evaporated miraculously somehow for some reason. I couldn't think why that might be, but there you go. Dear oh dear. Dear oh dear. So, talking head likes to make noise. Somebody that wants to tell us all about health who, frankly, I don't know, would you take health advice from this guy? Don't know. You can if you like. It's your funeral.
Doesn't mean they are good ideas or even rational. As I mentioned earlier, the cabbage soup diet, the grapefruit diet.
Yeah, those aren't rational.
All these things. And we should learn lessons, even modern, from The Biggest Loser.
Yeah, we should. It's rubbish. That's absolutely ill-conceived nonsense from start to finish, the whole thing. Very, very poorly put together. The most anti-scientific approach to weight loss I think I've ever seen.
Study that came out that showed metabolic damage for Biggest Loser contestants 2 and
Well, that's no surprise.
3 years after how much weight they had gained back.
Yeah, that's no surprise either based on what they were doing with those people. They were vastly, grossly underfeeding them and vastly, grossly over-exercising them. That is not an appropriate approach to the management of body composition. That is not sustainable. That's unhealthy in the extreme. It's contraindicated totally, and that's what's borne out. Shock horror.
How suppressed their metabolisms were. No one wants to think about that. Everyone wants to harp on short-term effects. And again,
That's nonsense, Scott. That's just rubbish. That's just you making noise.
over experience. And now we've just got the keto diet and people raving about things they don't understand.
Yes, we do, Scott, have people raving about things they don't understand clearly. Yes, we do.
Without understanding the long-term consequences. So,
Well, point to some. Show me a study that is adequately powered, adequately controlled, adequately tenured, adequately observed under discipline of science in the appropriate manner that shows long-term results of any dietary intervention of any kind in human beings. We'll wait. We actually won't wait, Scott, because we have better things to do with our lives. And my viewers already know that no such studies exist anywhere in the literature. Why don't you know that, son? Is it because you're incompetent to read the science and to critique the science? Perhaps.
so any ill-conceived diet can cause you to lose weight up front. That's
Yeah, and a well-conceived one can as well, and can be sustainable and lead you to sustained loss of fat is what we're talking about here, by the way, Scott. Not weight. Fat. It's not a dirty word. Goodness sake.
That's nothing new, and that's the history of studying diets, and keto diet is no different in that regard.
In what regard? You haven't said anything there, Scott. Wow, by the way. Absolutely. Give us some health advice, Scott, please. I'm keen to hear it. Wow.
Why? Because it's not sustainable.
Yes, it fucking is. 27 years is pretty sustainable, Scott. We're done here with that one. What's your next point?
And I'll get to that.
I've just got to it. It is sustainable. There are many, many people who have been consuming a very, very low carbohydrate diet for decades on end, son. That's quite sustainable. End of that point. You lose. What's next?
Keto diet and weight loss and weight control. I've got 4 headings I'm going to start with. First of all, let's start with the obvious. The National Weight Control Registry, which you can look up, studies thousands of people who have lost substantial amounts of weight.
No, they don't study them at all, Scott. They follow them by way of respondent data, and they ask them some questions and they get some feedback from those people. That's not a study. Okay? That's just some data that some people fed back to them.
And kept it off for a minimum, I think it's 3 years. And they state in their findings that they can find less than 1% of those who are registered as losing a lot of weight and keeping it off. Less than 1% did it with low-carb diets.
So, that's what people say. Who cares what people say? That's not a study, Scott. That's not an experiment. That doesn't prove anything whatsoever. I thought you were going to tell us about the real peer-reviewed evidence. That's not real peer-reviewed evidence. That's respondent data. Buffhead.
That is an epic fail.
Yes, it is, Scott. It's an epic fail of you doing what you told us you were going to do, which was rely on the real peer-reviewed evidence, which you haven't done there. You've given us some anecdotes. Okay? Pop yourself directly to fuck. Do not pass go or collect $200. That's a fail on that point as well, Scott. You lose again. Nil points for Scott still.
Low-carb diets. Remember, a diet must be sustainable. So if keto was the path to follow...
It's one path that you can follow, absolutely, and many people do, quite successfully, quite sustainably. I'm an example. There are many, many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of us, Scott. You're done on that one. We're finished on that. You're going to show us some peer-reviewed evidence that we shouldn't do that, weren't you? Because you're going to tell us that the dietary approach is an epic fail somehow. We're still waiting for any indication that would lead us to believe that it is, in fact, an epic fail.
Instead of a fantasy diet.
Oh, fantasy diet. You mean like the balanced standard American or standard Western diet? That's a fantasy in terms of its likelihood to lead you to optimal health, robustitude of enjoyment of life, longevity, or any of those things. An absolute fantasy. A ketogenic approach is something that absolutely ancestrally we are designed for. Genetically, we're designed for it by both positive and negative selection pressures over at least 4.5 million fucking years, Scott. We're done. What's next?
Then the findings of the National Weight Control Registry would simply reflect that.
No, they wouldn't necessarily. People tell lies, Scott, on respondent data. Write that down. People tell lies. That is not acceptable evidence for anything. Pop yourself directly back to fuck. It's an anecdote. It's a series of anecdotes. Okay?
Would be on there in abundance in higher proportions, showing conclusively how they lost weight and kept it off was through low-carb ketogenic.
That's a false claim on your part that would be the case. That's not necessarily the case at all. That's not scientific evidence of anything. Remember, real peer-reviewed evidence is what you were going to bring to the table here. We're still waiting.
Diets. Instead, National Weight Control Registry reflects the abject failure of...
No, it doesn't. It reflects the abject failure of its own ability to collect representative data from the population in terms of what they genuinely are doing and what their experiences genuinely are with a given thing. And even if it was doing that, which it isn't, it's still an anecdote and not a scientific piece of evidence of anything whatsoever.
Low-carb
diet. It does not get at cause and effect remotely. There are so many hugely, vastly, completely uncontrolled degrees of freedom, confounders, collinearities, etc., that render any such a self-reported data set of anecdotes to be of no value whatsoever in determining cause and effect as regards the outcomes of people from any dietary intervention of any kind whatsoever. What is next?
Diets, and I've recorded this in many of my books, Understanding Metabolism and other...
Understanding Metabolism, says a guy who wants to tell us that keto is an abject failure because anecdotes there. Okay, good. Good. Understanding Metabolism by Mr. Anecdotes. Excellent.
Books. Now, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 2006, that's the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition.
Put your fucking hands in your pockets when you are presenting and fucking keep them there.
2006, I'm going to put it up here on the screen for you. Ketogenic low-carb diets have no metabolic advantage over non-ketogenic low-carb diets.
What was the level of carbohydrate in the low population? What were the controls? Were these people locked in labs and observed over multiple decades? Was it adequately randomized from genetically identical twins at the outset? Was it adequately powered or tenured? The answer to all of those questions are no. This is a loosely, poorly controlled naturalistic observation. Okay, right. Low carbohydrate diets may promote greater weight loss than does the conventional low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet. We compared weight loss and biomarker change in adults adhering to a ketogenic low-carbohydrate diet or a non-ketogenic low-carbohydrate diet? What? 2 low-carbohydrate diets? And how do you define a low-carbohydrate? 20 adults, N equals 20. You want to make a generalized statement on the general population on the basis of N equals 20. And at the outset, these people had a body mass index that was 34.4. And these are all obese people. Okay, so again, does this reflect a generalized population? On the basis of obesity, perhaps it does to some degree, but let's face it, the average BMI you would hope would be somewhat lower than 34.4. Okay, so the ketogenic low-carbohydrate diet was 60% of energy as fat and 5% as carbohydrate. And on the non-ketogenic diet, 30% of energy was fat and 40% of energy was carbohydrate. Interesting. So 60 plus 5 is 65, fat and carbohydrate in the ketogenic group. What's 30 and 40? That's 70. So we have a 5% difference in protein intake in those two populations. Do you think that's a confounder at all? Even if everything else I've already said about the study wasn't true, and it is still true, this is nonsense. Okay, mean plus or minus standard error weight losses were 6.3 plus or minus 0.6 and 7.2 plus or minus 0.8 kilograms. But a signal-to-noise ratio which absolutely swamps that result and renders it totally of no utility whatsoever clinically. There is no actual observable difference there clinically. They weren't even statistically significantly different. How long did the study go for? Six weeks. We're done with this. Finished. Finished. This is rubbish, Scott. This doesn't prove anything whatsoever. This is of no utility or value whatsoever at all. And you are severely, severely out of your lane and out of your depth here, clearly, if you think yourself competent to critically assess science, because you clearly are nothing of the sort, son. Okay?
For weight loss. The same study
over 6 weeks
lists several adverse metabolic and emotional effects. So
and did it back any of those up?
I'm going to read that to you. And these were severe
in 20 people.
Adverse consequences after only 6 weeks. So that is...
So they changed somebody's diet markedly overnight without a transition period and expected them not to have any kind of adverse reaction to that, did they, Scott? Are you really that stupid? Are you really that fucking gullible? Are you really that lacking in scientific credibility that you think that what you're about to say is remotely valid or useful? Some anecdotes from a study that was poorly controlled, poorly run, lacked scientific rigor, statistical power, and applicability to a generalized population.
Something to consider and something that we need to look at. So I'm going to bring that up for you. Ketogenic low-carb diets have no metabolic advantage over non-ketogenic.
In extremely obese people over 6 weeks in a very small sample size of people who don't represent the general population. And it was because of wide inter and intra-individual variability. It was to do with huge signal-to-noise ratio issues, such that they couldn't even reach a statistical significance. This paper should never have even been published. It does not answer any questions. It does not provide any information of utility on any topic. This is ridiculous.
Low carbohydrate diets. And in the conclusion section, ketogenic low carb diets and non-ketogenic low carb diets were equally effective in reducing body weight and insulin resistance.
No, they weren't.
But the ketogenic low carb diet was associated with severe adverse metabolic and emotional effects.
Such as?
The use of ketogenic diets for weight loss is not warranted.
Such as? In those 20 obese individuals at that time? Severe side effects. What were they? No? Wow. Your credibility is in the toilet, son, if it wasn't already.
Boom. Okay.
Boom? What fucking side effects, son? What? And just because some imbecile authors write something is not indicated, that doesn't make it so. At all.
Okay, you've got to pay attention to what the research shows us. No,
Yeah, you do. And you haven't done that, Scott, because you are completely incompetent to do so. You have no fucking idea how to read a paper and to judge its veracity or its place in the universe clearly. You read words on a page, and if those words suit your already existing ideology, then you take those words as gospel because they're peer-reviewed, so they must be, inviolate canon of some kind, and you mindlessly repeat those words to an unsuspecting audience who think for some reason that you know what you're talking about, when it's absolutely clear and patent to anyone with any more than 5 minutes training that you do not at all. Buffoon.
You might say, well, Scott, you just said in the conclusion, equally effective at reducing body weight. The study was only 6 weeks long.
Yes, that's right. So there was nothing to be seen in that study. So why did you bother bringing it up on the screen, Scott? It was of no value from the start.
This is my whole point. Short-term hope over experience nonsense with the long-term consequences looming.
No, there is no indication of long-term consequences given in that paper. How can it? It was 6 weeks long. And you read a statement suggesting that there were side effects, but none were provided at all. And then you said, boom. Well, I'm impressed. I'm convinced because you said boom. And because they said is not indicated without supporting that statement with anything whatsoever.
What do I mean by that? In this study, what we see, several adverse metabolic and emotional effects of the diet.
You said that, but you didn't tell us what they were.
The point where the conclusion is the use of ketogenic diets for weight loss is not warranted.
Yeah, but what supports that conclusion, Scott? Other than their statement that it's not warranted or indicated. What did they support that with? And how can you support any statement about any dietary intervention over a 6-week period? It's fucking ridiculous. What is next?
So we go back to that Biggest Loser study here. We see 6 weeks of such a diet, several adverse.
Yes, you've said that, but you haven't told us what. Idiot.
Metabolic and emotional effects.
Because there aren't fucking any. There are no negative metabolic or emotional effects of a low carbohydrate diet if it is properly transitioned to, properly designed and instigated in the first instance, and properly executed under the assistance of someone who knows something about how that was done in our genetic past, what we are evolved for and what we can expect to be useful to us in terms of our health and robustitude of goodness of our life experience and longevity and everything else, most likely.
If you just want to wave away the emotional effects, those
Well, tell us what they are, Scott. Tell us what they are. Otherwise, we are required to just wave that away. If you suggest something without providing any evidence that it is so, it is our responsibility as a scientific community to go, off you pop to fuck. Provide the evidence, son. We'll wait. No, we won't. I'm having fun pushing buttons today. I think I was looking for that one. Anyway, we won't wait because we've got better things to do. There is no evidence to support your ridiculous fucking claims.
Adverse metabolic effects.
Yes, you've said that and you haven't provided any evidence for it.
Consequences are going to show down the road in terms of...
Yes, you've said that, but you haven't supplied any inference that would suggest that it is so. None at all. And now you're showing little cartoon pictures? Well, that's highly scientific, highly peer-reviewed, real science, isn't it? Good work, Scott.
The rebound weight gain, and that is what they're talking about. And don't forget, that is a respected, peer-reviewed American Journal of Clinical Nutrition.
That is a value judgment statement made by you. That has nothing to do with science. Science is litigated empirically, Scott, not with opinions of cocksplats, not with the opinions of fuck trumpet moron cock lunchers like you. Numbers are what we use to litigate science with. Have you got any of those?
2006, and that was after only 6 weeks. So let's
said that.
Stop the nonsense, shall we?
Yes, do. Stop the nonsense, Scott. Stop it today.
And then we've got research from the journal Cellular Metabolism, 2015, calorie for calorie.
Well, that's interesting because calories are heat. Humans can't consume heat and use it for metabolic process. The energy that human beings derive from foods is in a chemical form, not in the form of photons of heat. Interesting. So if you equate two food boluses by way of what their caloric content is, then you haven't actually equated them in terms of their actual energetic makeup, their effective actual energetic makeup. What can a human being derive from a given food bolus and capture and use for metabolic process? All sorts of different foods have different TEF values for one. Much of the protein that you consume doesn't get oxidized for energy at all, and as such contains no effective calories, therefore, actually, or the equivalent of calories in terms of the actual metabolic chemical currency of energy in the human body. It's ridiculous. It's absolute nonsense. Okay, calorie for calorie, TE. Dietary fat restriction results in more body fat loss than carbohydrate restriction, again in obese people. Okay, over what period of time? 6 days. Get the fuck out of here, idiot. 6 days. In 19 adults this time. N equals 19, 6 days duration. Were they locked in the labs for 6 days and kept under proper observation and control? I doubt it. Pop yourself directly back to fuck, you fucking moron. You absolute imbecile, Scott. You've been fooled. You've been taken in because you are totally incompetent to comment in this area. You're making a fool of yourself, son. You need to stop making these videos permanently today. Again, this shows nothing whatsoever.
In people with obesity. One of the important things about this study is it was funded by the National Institute of Health, and that's
so
very, very important.
No, it isn't.
So let's quote here. Body fat loss slowed during the keto diet and coincided with increased...
What are you quoting from now? What are you quoting from now?
Protein utilization and loss of fat-free mass. Now, this is important.
Put your fucking hands in your fucking pockets, Scott.
Because What they're showing is the effects of keto as the diet wears on.
No, they're not. If you're looking at that last study, they're looking at what was being oxidized. That's not the same thing as what was being lost. I've covered that. What are you talking about?
Yes, body fat loss slows down. Weight
You want to back that up with something? What is your point, besides no point?
loss may continue on the scale, but what you're seeing here is a reflection of increased protein utilization.
No, you're not. There's no argument that you have showed us that you are apparently referring to here that would back that claim up. If you want to make such claims, Scott, you need to back that up with some evidence that it is so. And so far, we've seen what you think is evidence for things already, and we're already quite clear as to whether or not you are capable of critically reading a paper and getting it right. We know you're not capable of that. So you want to make claims about protein use, son, you better show us some pretty good evidence that it's so.
What happens is the branched chain amino acids leak from the muscle tissue so they can...
Absolute fucking nonsense. Rubbish. Protein is the last thing your body will oxidize, given a choice between fats, carbohydrates, and protein. Protein will be spared, of course it will, in favor of the oxidization of fats and carbohydrates.
can be used for energy and deaminated.
Yes, in an emergency situation when there's basically no fats or carbohydrates available to be able to be used. Otherwise, no, Scott, false.
And loss of fat-free mass.
Nonsense. Absolute rubbish. Again, you're just making noise. You're saying words without providing any evidence that anything you've had to say is so. Fuck. Wow.
In other words, loss of lean tissue. Now, when this happens, this is an important
well, you say when this happens. Have you shown us any evidence that that happens before the point when there's basically no fat and carbohydrate left? Because it doesn't happen before that point, Scott. You're making shit up.
Consequence, a metabolic repercussion of low-carb diets. The metabolic compensation system, adaptation system kicks in. So what kind of weight you are now losing on the scale is you are starting to set your body up to store and hoard fat.
Absolutely not. You're telling us that the ketogenic diet sets your body up to store and hoard fat. Utter fucking nonsense. Totally ridiculous, Scott. It does no such fucking thing. The ketogenic diet involves the breakdown, the rapid breakdown of fat, not its storage. Mr. I understand physiology, I understand metabolism, Mr. Anecdotes. Wow.
And lose more and more lean tissue. And
no, doesn't happen.
Water. And this is important because it sends a message to the rest of the system in terms of metabolic adaptation. Thyroid slows down, metabolic process.
No. Not if you do the ketogenic approach to nutrition appropriately, correctly. No such thing occurs. False again.
To see slowed down.
27 years, Scott, my thyroid function is not slowed down. My lean mass has not been lost. Sure, I have less muscle mass than I did when I was 30 or 20. I'm also a very different training status now than I was then. So that's to be expected. It has nothing to do with my dietary approach. I'm mass stable. I'm body composition stable over time. Everything's tracking the way it should for a man of my age, pretty much. Job's a good one. It's almost like the ketogenic approach to nutrition is appropriate and is not problematic in any way. I'm still waiting for a problem to these total contraindications, these epic failures of the ketogenic diet, Scott. I'm still waiting for you to provide a single epic failure. Because that's what your video is entitled, The Epic Failure of the Ketogenic Diet, or similar. Well, let's hear it. Here's the proof, is what you're saying here in your title. Haven't seen any proof of anything from you yet, Scott, except your incompetence.
The body sets itself up to store more fat.
It does no such thing.
This is really, really important stuff. So we got to...
Well, it would be if it was true, Scott, but it isn't. It's shit you've made up. So it's not important. It's your fantasy.
keep our eye on the ball in terms of...
Yes, you do need to keep your eye on the ball, boys and girls. You need to keep your eye on the ball of the people who have the skills to kick that ball around, I guess, in a way that would be appropriate and at a level that you should be interested in. And this guy isn't there remotely. He's not in the same league, frankly. Yeah.
Of short-term effects, the previous study that I showed talked about just within 6 weeks, several metabolic consequences.
Yes, you've said that, and you still haven't provided us a single example of what they were. Remember?
Of ketogenic diet. We see them here, body fat loss.
You see them where? What are you referring to here? You've just made a bunch of shit up that does not occur and said, this is my proof. What are you referring to here? What is your reference for this misinformation that you currently have up on the screen in the form of a pretty little fucking cartoon character and your ridiculous, postulous, rancid ideas, Scott? This is not how we do science. This is not how we do real peer-reviewed science. You still haven't shown us anything that would empirically prove anything. You've shown us 2 short-term, vastly underpowered studies, neither of which is able to empirically establish any case for or against a ketogenic diet in any way.
Slows down, but increased protein utilization.
You've said that, and you still haven't established that it occurs.
Loss of lean tissue.
You've said that, and you haven't established that that occurs.
That sends messages throughout your body.
It would do if it was occurring. It fucking isn't.
It's checks and balances and metabolic adaptation to slow metabolism down.
No, my metabolism is still the same as it was when I was 30 years of age. My basal metabolic rate is roughly the same as measured empirically with actual scientific equipment in an actual laboratory situation, Scott. 27 years on a ketogenic diet, and my metabolic rate has not slowed down. When can I expect it to slow down, Scott?
And increase the capacity to store fat. Not what you...
Well, no. My capacity to store fat is clearly quite minimal. What's next?
You want for sustainable, ongoing weight loss.
Yes, 27 years, weight stable, pretty much. Probably 10 pounds lighter than I was 20 years ago as a function of being 50 and much more inactive and far less physically trained than I was when I was 30. Nothing to do with the intake of the diet. The basal metabolic rate is pretty similar.
And in relation to this, people go on and on about how
People do go on and on, don't they, Scott? They really fucking do go on and on and on, don't they? Yes, they really, really...
Blah, 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 blah. Finished.
Oh, dear. Anyway, you were saying...
much energy they have on ketogenic diets. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy because the research shows something else.
The research shows, does it? What does the research show, Scott? We're still waiting for you to tell us what the research shows. Still waiting.
Entirely. The Journal of American Dietetic Association, 2007. Blood ketones are directly related to fatigue.
So, does that mean blood ketones are the cause of fatigue? Or that the ketogenic diet is the cause of fatigue? During exercise, in overweight adults adhering to low carbohydrate diets for weight loss, a pilot study. Right. Ketogenic diets have been associated with reductions in free living physical activity. Okay. A response that can be counterproductive in individuals trying to lose weight. Should say fat. To explore whether popular low-carbohydrate diets might impact, that's a great thing about that word might, it leaves the other thing on the table, might impact the desire to exercise by raising blood ketone concentrations, fatigue, whatever that is, and perceived effort during exercise were compared in untrained, overweight adults adhering to a ketogenic low-carbohydrate diet or to a control diet low in carbohydrate but not ketogenic, so not a control diet then. 5, 65, and 30, 40. Again, there's that 5% discrepancy there with the protein. Whoopsie daisy, that could be a problem, couldn't it? In this prospective randomized 2-week pilot study, 2 weeks. Are we done? All meals and snacks were provided to subjects. Were they observed while they ate them? And were they observed 24/7 to make sure they didn't eat off plan as well? No? Are we done? Okay. And energy intake was strictly controlled. How? Did you lock them in labs and observe? To provide approximately, strictly controlled to provide approximately 70%. Well, that's an oxymoron, isn't it? Of that needed for weight maintenance. According to what? Calories? Heat units? Is that going to work? Probably not. At baseline and at the end of a 2-week exercise testing, or end of week 2, exercise testing was conducted in fasting participants. So suddenly now we've thrown in another variable, fasting. Okay. And what was fasting? Exactly. Okay. Weight loss and the reductions in fat mass did not differ by group during the trial. At week 2, blood beta-hydroxybutyrate concentrations were 3.6-fold greater for the ketogenic versus non-ketogenic group. Well, shock me. Really? And correlated significantly with perceived exercise effort. R squared equals 0.22. 0.22. Get the fuck out of here, you moron. Blood beta-hydroxybutyrate was also significantly correlated to feelings of fatigue. R equals 0.458, which is R squared about 0.16, 17, something like that, even less than the 0.22 of the previous one. Get the fuck out of here. And mood disturbance, whatever that means. These pilot data indicate that ketogenic low-carbohydrate diets enhance fatigability. No, it doesn't. It does nothing of the sort. No. How many subjects were there even? Great, awesome abstract here. It doesn't even tell us how many subjects were in this pilot study of 2 whole weeks duration, wherein they controlled nothing adequately and upon which they want to make cause and effect inference statements where none can be asserted. You're an idiot, Scott. You're an absolute fucking idiot. What's next?
And lack of energy, and this is very, very important as well.
No, it fucking isn't. This is noise.
So the Journal of American Dietetic Association.
Very credible association, by the way. Very credible.
Let's read the title here. Blood ketones are directly related to fatigue and perceived effort during exercise in overweight adults adhering to low carbohydrate diets for weight loss. And that's a pilot study.
Yes, we've just finished looking at this, Scott, and deciding it's of no value or utility to us whatsoever. This real peer-reviewed evidence of yours. No, son.
What we see here, if you want to
put your fucking hands in your fucking pockets.
Come down the abstract toward the end, and I'll read this to you. Blood beta.
Yes, we've just finished reading through this. The value of the R squared residuals, basically, around the trend lines they've drawn are so vast that these correlations are of no predictive value to speak of whatsoever. And even if they were, this is an association and not a cause and effect study. But they're not even of any utility. They are ridiculous. And Scott, Abel, is fucking ridiculous, clearly. What's next?
Hydroxybutyrate was also significantly correlated to...
Oh, God, fuck's sake, really?
Blah, 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 blah. Finished.
To feelings of fatigue and to total mood disturbance while exercising. These pilot data indicate that
Nothing at all is what they indicate. Not a damn thing.
ketogenic, low-carbohydrate diets enhance fatigability.
No, they don't show that at all.
And can reduce the desire to exercise in free-living individuals.
No, they don't show that at all. Nonsense.
So that's the last thing you want. If you want sustainable weight loss, then exercise has to go with that.
No, it fucking doesn't. False again. The benefits of a well-designed, appropriately executed exercise program in terms of your health in general are miraculous. There are huge benefits to appropriate exercise. However, if you have to exercise to maintain your body composition at an optimal range, then your diet is wrong. You do not have to exercise at all to be in the ideal body composition ranges. False again, Scott.
And what we see there is low carbohydrate diets lead to enhanced fatigue.
No, we don't see that at all. No, we fucking don't.
And feelings of apathy toward the actual exercise that helps you. So
No, we don't see that at all.
the blood ketones are directly related to fatigue and lack of...
So what? And directly related with an R-squared value of 2/3 of 5/8 of 7/9 of fuck all. You fucking idiot. No.
energy, and that is really, really important stuff.
No, it fucking isn't. Still.
So another journal that we can refer to, the Journal of American Dietetic Association.
Again, very, very credible. No.
2001, I'll just bring that up. And as we see here, diets that are high in carbohydrate and low to moderate in fat tend to be lower in energy consumption. The lowest energy intakes observed in those people on a vegetarian diet.
Energy measured how? By heat units again? Whoops.
Meaning going vegetarian, you take in less calories. The diet quality as measured as healthy eating index.
Well, hang on. Who's to say what's healthy? Because there are a whole bunch of people running around saying it's healthy to eat a bunch of vegetables and carbohydrates and avoid saturated fats and meats. Are they right? No. So who's to say what's healthy or what a healthy score is?
Was highest for the high carbohydrate groups and lowest for the low carbohydrate.
So in our opinion, what we think is healthy was best reflected by people who eat a diet similar to that which we promote, is what you've just said there, Scott. You fucking idiot. Really, seriously, son? Wow. Wow.
What, are you retarded?
Thank you, Ted.
Group. So quality of nutrition was highest when you ate high.
Says who? You, Scott? The Dietetics Association? No, Scott. They are in no position to tell you what is likely to lead you to health.
Carbs and lowest when you ate low carbs. And that's important as well. And the
Nonsense.
BMIs, okay, the body mass index were significantly lower for men and women on the high carb diet, and the highest BMIs, body mass indexes, were noted.
Yeah, because most of those people are unable to maintain a healthy range of muscle mass, and that's what affects their BMI. It's also quite likely that they will have compromised bone mineral density, which again leads to lowered BMI. Yeah, pretty much that's the reason for it. Straightforward. And again, if you knew anything about physiology or human nutrition or health studies in any way, Scott, you'd have known that. Okay.
For those on low carbohydrate diets. So eventually, low carb diets can lead to people getting fatter and fatter.
No, nothing you have shown supports that ridiculous fucking notion here at all, Scott, you fucking moron.
Instead of slimmer and slimmer. So be careful, because I get people who will tell me, oh, people in my office, they're on keto and they've lost 70 or 80 pounds. Short term.
Fucking nonsense, Scott, once again. Absolute fucking nonsense. Rubbish. Ketogenic diets work long term. 27 years in my case, for example. Okay.
Get back to me again in 12, 13 months.
How about 27 years? Will that cover it, Scott? Will it?
And see where they're at with that. And if you think you're going to just go on it for a little while, lose a little weight, and then adopt a carbohydrate, that is false thinking. And that's
false thinking, says Scott. Scott's an expert in false thinking, isn't he, boys and girls? Yes. Good.
Going to hurt you just as well. So, and I will add, in terms of that study now, the Journal of American Dietetic Association, popular diets and their correlation to health, nutrition, and obesity. What we see here, low carbohydrates correlate to more obesity.
So, healthy user bias. We're done. What's next?
And less health and nutrition, high carb.
Says who?
Carbohydrate diets, better nutrition.
It says who?
And better body mass indexes.
Well, we've covered that. And who's to say a lower body mass is better necessarily? A higher body mass index informed by someone who is highly muscular is likely, within a certain range, to be better than someone who is under-muscled, isn't it? Right, anyway, we're getting on to an hour. There we go, an hour's just gone by. I've had enough, frankly. This person is a complete waste of oxygen. This person is a complete waste of space. This person has nothing of value to add to any discussion on human nutrition, human physiology, health studies in any way, or a discussion about science. This turd of a man is a complete cock lunch. He's a fuck trumpet of the highest order. He's an ass hat extraordinaire. Frankly, if you want to take advice from this guy, it's your funeral, it's your lookout. Good luck to you. Those of you who have understood what I've had to say here in this video, join me again next time when someone else will be wrong on the interwebs, because I've fucking had enough of this clown. See you then. Ciao for now. Let's have some music to see us out, shall we? 2, 3, 4.